What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Coming in Clutch. I am LA Car Spotter, aka Cody Lewis.
And I am Speedy Guidi, a.k.a. Lorenzo Iacomini. Guys, we're back. We're bigger than ever. We're better than ever. We got explosions coming your way. We got fast cars. We got a lot of great topics. And today, we're going to talk about NASCAR and Formula One.
NASCAR.
Why don't we
Everybody's favorite topic.
Why don't we roll that tape?
All right, man. What's going on? Before we get into it, let me it's been a month or so. What's
been a while.
going on? Any
So-
shows recently? Anything car wise?
No shows. I recently went to Japan for a week. Saw a lot of interesting
Ooh.
cars. And I know you're a big fan of Tokyo.
I am.
And Japanese culture.
like Japan all around.
Dude.
Turning Japanese, I think I'm turning Japanese.
Dude, yeah, I played that song way too much. We played the Tokyo Drift song all around. It was probably pretty bad.
Man.
It was not good. But what I will say is they have cars
a bunch
there.
of white guys walking around Japan playing the Tokyo Drift song.
Yeah.
I'm sure they loved that.
We played in the Apple store. My buddy had to buy a new phone, so we were like bumping in the Apple store.
You are so embarrassing.
Dude, people dug it. It was great. Or maybe they were just being respectful, which they are all respectful. But they had cars there, which we don't have here. I saw R34 Skylines everywhere. I didn't get any photos of them because they're always driving. Saw
Yeah, I heard they're like
Alpine.
the Honda Civics.
They're
like,
sick.
They're just like all over the place, and everybody can get them, so they do.
Dude, and the license plate hype is real. Like, they all have like one number on their license plates. It's
That's sick.
It's really cool. Saw an Alpine, which is one of the highlights. And they all have these Toyota vans that have like the most ghastly front end you've ever seen. In your
Oh
entire
yeah,
life.
they have.
It's like
yeah, they're sick.
They're-
I don't understand.
they're
why
hella nice
get these
inside.
We get these whack Toyotas, like these stupid vans, and they get
Yeah.
these hooked up monster like show vans.
yeah, and you know how in London they have the London taxi cabs that look all the same and that kind of thing. In Japan they have kind of the same deal, but they're all like these old kind of style cars, but they all like are fucking immaculate. They look gorgeous inside.
You just missed the Tokyo Auto Salon.
I know, I'm hella mad about it. It looked really cool.
Like
It
that
looks
was just
really
this
cool.
week.
I know.
That's
But
cool.
It was really great. What about you? What's new?
Well, I would say
Doing-
since the last time we did this, my biggest thing car wise was Manny's place. Manny Koshbin opened up his facility.
He's your best
and
friend,
had
right?
a-
You guys always talk on Instagram.
Yeah, no, totally. Unblock me, Manny. Just do it already. Do the right thing. We're cool. It's all good between me and you. But yeah, either way, everybody got a rare opportunity to see Manny's collection. Yeah, laugh it up, chum. Laugh it up.
He doesn't follow me, and I don't follow him.
Whatever. So
no, keep going.
yeah,
There were some hammer cars there that day.
So the whole reason for this gathering was the Hermès Bugatti Chiron.
that was a really good French accent. I am the Frenchman on this show.
Yeah, no,
That was
it
good.
was sick. That was the highlight of the show, and it was a great looking car.
Was it as hype as everyone made it out to be? It's a Chiron that's white.
It's like, all right, it's awesome. I think I personally would have done a couple things differently.
The seats
But
are.
It's hard to make judgment on a $4 million one of a kind, $4+ million one of a kind like collaboration between the fanciest car company in the world and the fanciest like accessory company in the world. But
He really likes his Hermès, huh?
yeah, he does. So he's got a one-of-one Pagani Huayra, which I'm surprised is not like a BC. You know, he has like a Huayra
I think
But
getting
it's
a
not a
BC, I think getting a
BC
BC, the wait
would have been
the
too
wait
much.
list is also like another 4 years.
Yeah,
Like you
that's
get
true.
every wire is sold out.
Well, basically, I
were-
think the wire was done really nicely. It had like that tan interior. It had like these Birkin bags in the back that matched everything, and like everything. The continuity was great because all the grills matched and like everything was nice. But with the Bugatti, I think that it was like a little too much cream with like the cream wheels and the cream grills. But really, what bothered me was the lack of continuity. So it had like this H moniker like pattern grill to go with the Elme, but then it had the regular Bugatti style grill on the side. It only
Oh,
had
really?
That, yeah, it only had it in the horseshoe, and then
Oh,
on the
that's
back,
lame.
and in the front they were metal, like aluminum or brushed, whatever.
It should have all been
Probably
the H pattern
titanium.
everywhere.
Yeah, but then on the back, the rear grill we all know is like this huge monster like bean shape. That was painted, and it didn't match the front grill at all because the front grills weren't painted. So it was that, and then also the seats didn't have any stitching.
There
in
had to
them.
be a reason for that. You know, with those cars, everything is customizable, and they went through every square inch of that car, and they made like a decision on that. It wasn't just like
exactly.
you know, it was
Which
like
is-
some guy making. Maybe it was him. Maybe it was like their design dude.
But
it was like
overall,
a
it was
conscious
awesome.
decision.
He had his black P1. He had his
That car is freaking-
935
that car
race
is so
car
sick.
that he has now. There was also a black 935, the all carbon 935 race car.
I don't know how I feel about those.
I got there to Manny's a little late, and it was a freaking mob scene. It was literally a mob scene because Manny's like, all
He's
over
big.
social
He's
media
major.
and
He's
stuff,
social
so-
like influencer dude right now. But
exactly.
interesting. Well, why don't you say we jump into our topic?
Let's jump into our topic.
So our main question,
Yes,
our thesis of this episode basically is why is racing so unpopular in the United States? We're talking about this because we talked about racing for a while because I recently went to the Formula One race in Austin, Texas, and it was electric. It was great, but there wasn't as much hype and energy behind the show and the race as I thought there would be. And our good buddy Brandon Adrian, he was there, and I actually went into the paddock and I saw Lewis Hamilton this close to me, like jumped and hugged his family. He was right in front of me. I was like, oh my gosh. And the energy still wasn't like there though. It wasn't wild. And my buddy Brandon looks at me, he's like I was like, wow, this is crazy. He's like, yeah, but this is like not half as crazy as it could be.
Yeah.
Like in Europe, they go absolutely wild. And it's like, but so why is that? Why is racing in America so specifically Formula One? Why is it so
Give me like your opinion of why you think it's not super popular.
I'm going to give you some facts
Yeah.
of why it's not popular. I think racing in America was extremely popular. So this is very timely because of the new movie, the Le Mans race. What's the movie called?
Formula
Ford versus Ferrari just
Oh,
came out.
yes.
So that's like fresh in our minds. So racing was really popular in that day because it was Ferrari versus Ford. And it was this huge race, and Americans rallied behind it. It was the first time on TV, so it was like huge. We're not going to go into Le Mans because that's a whole nother can of worms, but basically racing back in the day for Americans, it whittled down to NASCAR. NASCAR was like the most famous thing back in the day. And I don't know if you know this, but NASCAR started off as a bootlegging,
I didn't know this.
a bootlegger's way to get their alcohol moonshine to their customers, basically. They
Yeah,
had to,
so tell me more about that because you explained that to me, and I never heard that before.
And you never heard that
and
before,
I
yeah.
feel like I'm a fucking doofus.
So basically, it was like all these kids with these old-fashioned cars, kind of a car like that, if you could see in that camera angle right there. Just like these old jalopies, and they had to deliver a bunch of this moonshine, and to get away from the cops, they would soup the hell out of their cars so they can run away. On their free time, they'd go racing. And then the racing got so big and so popular, these hot rods, that they eventually started doing dirt oval racing. And that's how NASCAR originally started. It started in 1949 was the first race. But it basically started from that. It was a poor man's sport. It was just get your car, make it as fast as you can, just get out there and do it.
Yeah.
Right?
It
And
was-
that's kind of the genesis of American racing. It was very ho bunk, very just like anyone can do it. It wasn't high echelon people. It was just the poor middle class trying to go fast, as opposed to Formula One, which has always been a rich man's sport.
Well, I mean, like the genesis of Formula One, it focused on high-end European brands. So all those European brands were like Ferrari and Lotus and Mercedes and
McLaren, all big names that we associate with supercars nowadays.
Yeah,
Those are all $200,000+ besides the Lotus. And they were in these beautiful locations. I think that's a big thing too. Formula One races now and always have been destination party locations. You go to Monaco, you go to now Dubai, you go to Monza. Like they're very beautiful places and like these like historical lands.
And NASCAR was like started off in like Daytona, Florida, and which like is not a destination, and then it's
Indianapolis.
Like
like I'd rather shoot myself than go to Indianapolis.
Like
what I was talking.
But I mean, like that's so my association with like my analogy is like NASCAR. NASCAR is kind of like, or racing in general as a global sport is kind of like soccer for Americans.
Yes.
So we don't necessarily have like a huge stake in these other sports, and it's similar to like F1. We don't have like a huge stake in F1. We don't have like any Americans in pole position, and we don't have like. It's just like soccer. We're not that good, so we're not that interested.
Yeah, there's no Americans dominating the Formula One grid at the moment. NASCAR, every driver is American. I don't know the amount of foreign drivers. I think there's only a few, but it's all Americans. We have a huge stake in it. It's like you're rooting for an American when you do that. Like so Formula One, you're rooting for a manufacturer, basically.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's just like most other sports. We have like our little American sports bubble, and then there's like the European sports bubble. So like same thing with like our racing as it developed in America. NASCAR developed in America, and it grew in America, and it remained an American sport. The F1 and those types of racing grew in Europe, and it was a European sport.
Right.
I mean, especially during those times, we don't have the type of social media that we have. So we weren't really like watching F1 in the 40s and 50s like on TV like we can now.
No one was putting him on TikTok? What are you talking about?
Exactly.
But I think another important thing about NASCAR, why it was so popular here, is because the cars that were racing weren't Ferraris and Lamborghinis and Maseratis. There were Chevys, there were Fords, there were Plymouths, there were Dodges, there were cars
that people were buying.
You could, in the beginning of NASCAR, they started as stock cars and they were very lightly modified, things like roll cages and stuff. And eventually they got a little more, more race oriented and safe. They had more safety.
But they were called stock cars because they were stock cars from factory.
So you would watch this race and Chevy would win, and you'd be like, "Wow, that's a sick car. I'm thinking about buying a new car. Maybe I'm gonna buy that Chevy that just won." So Americans really like the idea of win on Sunday, buy on Monday. You hear that all the time in American culture, and that's really big. A Ferrari wins a race back in the day, you can go buy a Ferrari, but in America you couldn't go buy a fucking 365. In America that easily. Normal American people could go buy a Chevy.
Yeah, totally.
Which is remarkable.
And also V8s are huge, and that's like that goes along with the brash American attitude and like the loudness and violentness of the sport. And the sports are like super dangerous, and like it's just we have a quote here. Basically, Darrell Waltrip, who was a racing announcer, he said,
and racer himself,
but he said if the lion doesn't bite the tamer every once in a while, it wouldn't be exciting, which is just like, if these people didn't crash, then nobody would go to the races.
Yeah.
So the idea is like the races are fun and all, but most of the excitement comes with how dangerous they are,
Right.
and like the anticipation that something crazy is going to happen. So.
Like the stereotype behind NASCAR is that these guys are like kind of hillbillies and they crash and they get mad and they get out of their cars and they start fighting each other. It's like a hockey It's like a hockey match.
But like rightfully so, because it like came from that type of
right.
person. Like those were the guys that used to be racing.
Absolutely. And I think again, metaphor I like to put. You said soccer. The metaphor I like to have is NASCAR is like a beer and Formula One's like a champagne. It's very like nice, and you drink champagne on like a yacht, and beer you just slug it back. It's fucking you smash the can on your head. And it's like it's very, it's just like
it's very American and
it's
brutal.
But also I think that translates to the engines as well. I think Formula One makes really. Think of Ferrari V12s, the straight V12s they make. They're very sophisticated. The technology they had in those things are like amazing. They also went racing in Le Mans, so these engines are just masterpieces. Totally. In America, they just had these fat blocks that had like 18 liters that made like 200 horsepower, and like it was just like whatever, just do it. And they weren't really sophisticated. And they're super simple, and that kind of it was a simple race for a simple engine.
But it was culturally that's what defined those two sports.
The engines are the microcosms for the cultures, I think.
No, I mean the Europeans were definitely more focused on like more detail oriented, more highly engineered. This is where high end watches are coming from. This is where high end art is coming from. This is where like all this extremely technical craftsmanship comes from. So the same thing trickled down to their engineering in their cars. So F1 was obviously super highly engineered compared to what was NASCAR, which was just like brutal.
Absolutely. Brutality. I think we should get into why Formula One's not popular in America. So we have this huge timeline here. We looked up a lot of this stuff because, guys, we're not experts on racing. We started this episode and we were like, wow, we actually looked up a lot of stuff because we don't know jack shit about racing.
Yeah. Do you watch NASCAR?
Nope. I've been to a NASCAR race. I don't watch Formula One. Everyone says, I wish I was in a Formula One. Everyone says that. But
it's like Americans, for the majority, they're not into Formula One.
Totally.
Like and also, if you're like, I hear a lot of people saying now, obviously, like, it's one of those sports that's huge and it's all over social media now because the young athletes that are winning. But right now it's kind of a boring time in Formula One because the same people keep winning and like
it's too technical and it's too strategy based. But
totally.
Basically, we wrote out this big timeline of like of Formula One in America, and there's a reason why it never really grew. It wasn't just because Americans were like, It was basically because Americans weren't really good at it. In a lot of ways.
We weren't good at it.
That's a very American thing. We're not good at it. Screw it. We're not going to do it. We're going to stay to our NASCAR and our big operation.
But it's because if you're not good at it, then you're not getting like your people to watch. Then your companies aren't making money off of it. And then the people that are like broadcasting your sport don't want to support it anymore. So it's highly based on people's willingness and interest to, like in watching the sport and how the ratings are. So it was just like a ratings game.
This was basically 10 years after NASCAR started, was the first Formula One race in America. They had it at Sebring. And people thought it was going to be awesome. And, everyone was going to show up. They had some big, they had all the Formula One race car drivers there. They had this, it was an amazing thing. And it proved unspectacular. And I think
there was a race right before in 1958 that had an American driver. And it was
Oh, that's right.
It was an American Grand Prize. It was before we did the Grand Prix. Like, before it was officially like an F1 race, there was a race with an American driver, and he beat Ferrari. So America was hyped. And America was like, we could beat Ferrari. Like,
it's like Le Mans all over again, baby.
Exactly. So, like, they were like, let's bring F1 to America. So the next year, they thought that they were going to have, like, huge turnout. And 59, they brought F1 to America.
And so it didn't work out. So they brought it back in 89 to 91 in Phoenix, Arizona. And it was just, no one attended it. It just wasn't big. I don't know if it was up to marketing, if it was up to the racers, or whatever it was. It just didn't really happen. But then
was abysmal.
it was abysmal. That's a good word.
Abysmal attendance.
So 91 it ended again. No more Formula One in America. But then again in 2000 they had it an F1 race at Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Yeah,
that is the American stomping ground.
Yeah,
and that was a big hit.
Yeah, well, it was like to ring in the new millennium. If you guys didn't know, the year 2000 is kind of a big deal. It was the new millennium, and everybody lost their shit.
I was 5 years old.
Really?
Yeah.
I was like 13.
60?
60? I don't know. I was getting my first computer. Like my first personal computer, okay? And
was it the size of this table?
No, it was a Sony Vaio. It was a flat screen actually. It was like the first flat screen computer ever. And it had speakers and it was dope.
Okay,
it was dope. Whatever. But we had like the attempt or the chance of a lifetime to host the F1 again in the year 2000. So that was a huge hit.
And I think
held it at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and it was a record attendance over 250,000 people. It's
pretty good.
And that's like record F1 attendance overall. That's not just like American.
Absolutely.
Attendance.
So until 2007, it was very popular. So for 7 years, it was a big reign, but then there was a disagreement between Formula One and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. There was like some contract or something. Something kind of went wrong.
They just didn't want to continue their contract.
It stopped. They cleared their hands. But then everyone thinks now Formula One in America, they think of Circuit of the Americas. 2012, it started up again. Formula One came back to America. Yeah. And that's the race that I attended. It's basically it's a brand new racetrack. It's super nice.
You attended it.
I attended it 2019, but in 2012 is when it started. So
yeah.
2012 until, who knows, will be held there in America, which is pretty cool.
Beyond.
And I already said what I thought about that, but again, it could use a little more energy. But what I will say is that everyone I talked to at the Austin, Texas race, I was like, oh, do you like Formula One? And they were kind of like, I think maybe 10% of people were like, yeah, I've been following it. And the rest were all saying, no, this is my first. Everyone said it was their first race, and majority of people said, no, I don't know anything about it. And a lot of people said, I actually came because I watched the Netflix special, Formula One, whatever, what's the show called? Drive to Survive, and I got really, and like, I came because of this show. And I was like, that's a really interesting thing. People showed up because of they watched this Netflix show. Netflix is a monster, as we all know, and they all showed up because of this massive show to this Formula One race, and I guess they seemed like everyone was pretty stoked about it.
It's pretty interesting.
It was so basically the show.
It's crazy that it had that much of an impact.
It is ridiculous, especially because me and you don't watch the show and we don't really know that much about it.
It was like,
but I guess everyone in Texas,
miniseries.
Yeah.
But if you consider the timeline, I would say it follows social media. You know,
yes.
By the time it faded out, by the time it came back in, like. Now social media is a monster and everybody is so worldly, you know, like you can be into sports all around the world extremely easily.
Totally.
And now we see the impact that F1 has on the rest of the world. So I think that social media has definitely brought, plus, you know, like these documentaries and people just like these stars, you know.
I think
we have huge stars in the sport now.
Think of. Can you name me two race car drivers in NASCAR?
No.
Can you name me two race car drivers in Formula One?
Yeah, yeah, Lewis Hamilton and Bottas.
Nice.
Yeah,
but the reason because a large portion of that is because they're all over social media. These guys are superstars. Lewis Hamilton's come to LA and shuts the place down. Yeah. He does drive around LaFerrari, so that's like, whoa, but it's remarkable. Like a NASCAR racer comes to LA, we're like, cool.
Like he'll connect on American culture, which is like, I think highly due to social media and our access.
And everyone wants to be a part of this Formula One, you know, thing that's going on now because it's so big on social media. It's cool.
Totally.
To be into Formula One. Like, Cody, would you rather, if everything aside, social media, these superstars aside, would you watch NASCAR or Formula One?
Formula One for sure.
Me too.
I mean, I'm just because of the nature of the beast, you know. Formula One is not like NASCAR is circuit racing. It's just a big oval, and like understandable that it's definitely a sport, and they definitely have straightaways where they have to navigate through each other, and then it's highly left centric. But I mean, yeah, like it's more than just a big circle, but it's just kind of boring for me.
Yeah. And
Like, and F1 seems like really cool.
I will be the devil's advocate. Formula One is more interesting, and these race courses are hallowed, and they're just super old, and they're very technical. But also, at this point, the cars have gotten so fast, and the drivers are so good that it's basically a strategy game, and you basically play at the tires. But nonetheless, it's still more interesting to watch a car go through a tunnel than watching go.
And it's also dominated by like just a couple drivers. So
Yeah, so it's like
and
you
it
can
has been
kind of
for
figure
a
who's
long
going to
time.
win. Like I know for a fact that Lewis Hamilton's phenomenal on the Abu Dhabi Yas Marina track. Like he wins that every time. So it's like why am I even watching this race? He's going to win.
Yeah,
You
totally.
know, but
So
but
let's
there's
go, yeah. Go on.
no. I was going to say I want to get into why like NASCAR is like we're talking about all this Formula One, all this hype of Formula One. There's a reason because our generation's not into NASCAR.
Yeah,
But it was
it's like a
extremely popular. Everyone, there's the big quote. It's like the most widely watched sport in America.
So like 48 was the first official year of NASCAR, like you said, like in the Prohibition era, all these people were building souped up cars, but they were also dealing with the mob. So when they're doing these races and all this like basically like backyard setup like gangster stuff, the race drivers weren't getting paid, and they weren't like the winners weren't getting their winnings. So the official association of NASCAR was started in 1948 to protect the drivers and make sure that they got their winnings. And then in 49 was like the first NASCAR race, and that was the Charlotte Speedway. And then 59 was the first Daytona 500.
First Daytona, the first
First
500
race.
was a couple of years after that. But
Okay.
through the 70s, 80s, and 90s, NASCAR had a steady increase. It was getting very popular, especially the
Yeah.
advent of TV. It was always on, and people would always watch it.
Motorsports, extreme
you know?
sports, like that was definitely part of
Yeah.
it. It was big branding, got involved, like heavy brands got involved.
Big
and,
time, big time.
Like it was just part of the culture. I mean, just if you think back in the 90s, like a BMX, I mean not BMX, like just motorsport culture and all that.
Totally.
Had these big bright outfits and with brands
Yeah.
across the chest and stuff,
and
like
then
all
I
the
think-
dirt bike riders.
Totally. And I think at around 2000s, you hit a peak of NASCAR.
Mhm.
And that's when I want to talk about this. We all know the movie Talladega Nights came out. So it came out in 2006, and that was at the peak of NASCAR. And that's basically my first introduction to like the world of NASCAR when I was a kid.
And
Because
I've
I
been,
really didn't care that much, but we watched this movie, and it was one of Will Ferrell's funniest movies, and we quote it all the time. We quote that like I freaking love Crepes. I had a whole mess of them this morning. And like we quote
It's
it.
true.
It's such a funny, quotable movie, and everyone from our generation loves it. It's like a
very
Step
true.
Brothers. It's like a.
But it made so much fun of NASCAR that it
much.
was so hilarious on such a grand scale that it was basically the beginning of the end.
Yeah,
Like it made NASCAR such a joke in the public eye that
Totally.
that was literally the peak, and then after that movie, it slowly like started
Declined.
to see this decline.
I think,
It's
and
not
I
gone, but
have
it's
a
in decline.
hypothesis in the movie.
Are you
had a-
hypothesizing now?
I am hypothesizing because now I'm a scientist in
Oh,
2020.
okay.
The movie has a direct correlation to the decline of NASCAR.
Oh, is that what you just hypothesized?
That's
right
what
after I had just hypothesized that?
Yeah, but I'm putting it in a nice way,
Okay.
in an intelligent way. But it could be a coincidence, but also it couldn't, because everyone of our generation, basically these people who are always consuming media, are all seeing this movie and are like, haha, these are like big fat idiots who eat Kentucky Fried Chicken and can
Yeah.
drink Powerade and Blue Mystic Mountain Dew every day for dinner are like, these are these people. Why am I watching these people?
I'm all
on
hopped
TV?
up on Mountain Dew.
Yeah, totally. So it's like no one watched it, and it's all the older generation who's watching it. Who
Like baseball.
yes, nobody
Like
likes
it's like
baseball anymore.
nobody wants to watch baseball like they used to.
I know. I've never watched baseball. I was always a tennis player.
No, just like
No,
and
we freaking played lax, bro.
no,
In the spring.
even growing up, the kids that were into baseball were like nerds.
After that movie came out in 2006, it just was a steady decline. And in 2019, they had their lowest ratings of all time. It just went down significantly. If you know the Nielsen ratings, it went down to 5.3, which you kind of had to explain to me what a Nielsen rating was, but that's kind of like the TV way of saying how popular something is, as opposed to YouTube views. See an actual view count. Nielsen rating tells you how popular something is.
Yeah,
Like a snapshot of who's watching and
who it's like there's a ratio to it, but it's like viewers that are actually tuned in to that channel during that time of air versus I don't know.
it's confusing.
I'm not sure.
It doesn't matter because it isn't. We don't. Nielsen ratings are obsolete now.
I mean,
but
what it means
our Nielsen
is,
Nielsen rating.
what it is a ambiguous number that is an indication of how popular your show is, and it's losing popularity. It doesn't have as much viewers as it did, being one of the biggest heavy hitters in sports. Not to say that it's not still watched on a grand scale. It just doesn't have the same kind of viewership as it used to.
And it's going down.
Yeah. So like, you know, like in the beginning of this, kind of, I asked you quickly about your opinions, but like, give me your real opinion about like NASCAR and F1.
I think Formula One is a phenomenal set of races. I think it's awesome. I like the idea behind Formula One because you get amazing road cars from Formula One. NASCAR, you don't see like the Mustang isn't developed on a NASCAR track. Like I like that Ferrari puts their Formula One race car technology into the road cars, and that's what makes them better. I like that. It's very much, it's kind of flipped. Formula One and NASCAR is flipped. Like the technology, you can go buy a Ferrari Ferrari wins on Sunday, you buy it on Monday. It's kind of like that mentality has been kind of switched in kind of a weird way. You know what I mean? You can't, the stock cars now they're just a shell with a huge engine in them. I don't even know where half the engines come from. I don't know if they're all the same. I don't know. There's a Camry out there, the V8 running around. Like that's insane. But I agree with you. I can't.
Like they have like a Supra, but it looks like the same as all the other cars.
Yeah,
it's just
weird.
like the body is like is painted to look like a Supra.
Yeah,
but it's just a shell.
It's just a big sticker. But I can't. I'm with you. I can't get behind the race. I've been to a NASCAR race, and this is all it is. It's just people going like breaking their necks left, right, and you just at a certain point, if there's not a crash or like something technical going on, the cars like catch up to one another. I was at Vegas Speedway, and it's kind of shorter. So like the guy in first place catches up to the guy in last place, but
and they start lapping each other.
I can't tell the difference when you're sitting there. You're like,
and you can't keep track.
I'm like, what is going on right now? But in Formula One, like you can tell who's in first place. There are drawbacks. It is too technical. People like, there's a lot of strategy to it. When you take your pits, when you take your tires, when you use the soft compound, this and that. And that's a little but it's more interesting and it's definitely more sexy. It's a more sexy sport to be into. NASCAR. Cool. If you say I like NASCAR, people there's a big stigma behind that.
Totally.
Like if you say Lorenzo, I love NASCAR, I'll look at you a little different.
Yeah.
You know,
100%.
If I walk in your house, you're watching a NASCAR race. I'm like, Cody, what the fuck are you doing? Yeah. It's like a weird look.
That's the thing. For me. Not like you were gonna ask me or anything. But
what do you think?
Well, like for me, I have like the same opinion. You know, there's definitely a stigma behind NASCAR, which is part of the reason which existed before I existed. So coming into this world, I already knew about the hillbilly factor of NASCAR. You know, like
totally.
Just like it wasn't my car scene, and like. When I think about the cars that I want, I wasn't thinking about Toyota Camrys and Chevys and Fords. Like I was thinking about the posters on my walls were Ferraris and Porsches and Aston Martins. So and also like when I think about places that I want to be and places that I want to visit and destinations, it's not Daytona, Florida. It's Monaco.
Spa.
It's
I
yeah,
want to go to
exactly.
Spa
It's
so
all these
bad.
crazy locations. So
Nürburgring,
I mean,
dude.
besides the fact that F1 is so much more glamorous as a sport. I mean, if I'm gonna be watching circuit racing, I want to be watching the old school like 40s mud cafe racers, the big wheels that like are just sliding in the mud the whole time.
You're
Like
absolutely right.
that
You're
shit is
absolutely right.
cool. And like, granted, there's car accidents and stuff in NASCAR, and that's cool to watch and all. But that is also part of the brutality of NASCAR and like the I don't know, it's just for cretins, and
That's a big word there.
I mean, I'm a big South Park fan, and South Park had a hilarious episode if you haven't seen it. But I mean, it's like I don't know. I associate it with a certain group of
People.
trailer trash. So F1 is just like it. I'm not that into it, and as much as I would like to be into it, like I've said 4 times already, it's kind of like dominated by these all stars that have just been winning for so long that it's super predictable at this point. But I like the idea behind like the highly engineered engine and the finesse of it, and it's I don't know. F1 seems cooler, but at the same time, at the end of the day, I'd rather be watching like '80s Group B rally racing, and that's like
Well, yeah, that's freaking the coolest thing of all time. I think that's a good place to end, folks.
Yeah.
Let us know what you think. I want to know what you guys have to say about NASCAR, Formula One. Are you a fan of NASCAR? Are you a fan of Formula One?
Put it in the comments.
What do you hate about both? What do you hate about the people that follow it? Are we wrong? Are we right?
Do you want Coca-Cola on the windshield of your car?
I want Fig Noons on my windshield. This is big and inconvenient, but I do love Fig Noons. All right, guys. My name is Lorenzo Iacomini.
I knew that already. You told me.
Yeah, but say it again.
My name's Cody Lewis, if you didn't know.
Guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Woo! That's gonna be the trademark. Sweet. Wait, keep recording because I want to do a little. Should we do anything else? Should we do like a little?
Do you want to just listen to us butthole around on the microphones?